Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Frank Zacarri, and this is Life Altering Events. Now, I'm going to start this show with a very shameless self-promotion. I've just written now my seventh book, not my sixth, my seventh, which has just entered the publishing process. So I'm not sure how long that's going to take, but it just got through the second round of editing. And the book is called The Secret to Walking on Water is to Know Where the Rocks Are. Now, this is a guide for every entrepreneur or anybody who runs an organization. And as you'll see many times throughout this guide, success doesn't come from working harder or working smarter. It's not about what you know that's going to determine your success or failure. It's more about what you don't know that will determine your success or your failure. So many organizations sink because they simply don't know where the rocks are. This guide will help you to prepare for what you don't know so you can see it before it hits you broadside, like it did for so many of us. Well, enough of the shameless self-promotion. Ladies and gentlemen, my next guest wrote this, so I'm going to give her credit up front because this is a tremendous opening. And she did a great job. Have you ever felt in a rut? You're feeling a little bit static or stuck in negativity, and you're not sure how to create the life that you were meant to live? Have you ever felt you couldn't escape the negative thoughts or feelings? Do you feel an emptiness inside as if a piece of you is actually missing? Do you struggle following a healthy lifestyle due to just the way life is? Do you feel like you're not enough and that you're unsure how to break this cycle or where to start? Everybody watching this has said yes to this at some point in their life. Everyone. Mm-hmm. Today, my guest, Megan Fenyoe, is going to tell us that we are enough and that we can make the changes that we want in our life. Let me tell you a little bit about Megan. She is an Air Force veteran, just like me, except she was an officer. She is a licensed clinical mental health therapist, and the initials are LCSW for those of you who are into initials. She's a speaker. She's the host of the Blonde Bombshell podcast and I'm Enough TV. She's the founder and CEO of the International I Am Enough movement, which is a 501c3 nonprofit corporation. And in addition to all of that, Megan is a best-selling author. Her recently published book is You Are Enough, 5 Steps to Move from Struggling to Strength. And she's a TEDx speaker. So, Megan, with all that going on, I'm so glad you had the time for us. Welcome to Life Altering Events.
Thank you, Frank, so much for having me. It's a pleasure to meet you. And like I said earlier, thank you for your service. I love connecting with fellow veterans, but also Air Force. So thank you so much for having me today.
It's my pleasure. Now, Megan, share with the listeners, other than what I laid out there, the journey that led you, because you had a very interesting life, that led you to where you are today. How did you get here?
Oh, my goodness. Well, yes, I've had a very interesting life. People always say, Megan, like your life needs to be on a Lifetime TV show. I've heard that since I was like in middle school or elementary, whatever. So I grew up in a very dysfunctional family. I have a learning disability. I have an 8th grade reading level and an 8th grade math level, where my guidance counselor in high school told me and my parents I should never go to college because I was never going to graduate college. And at that point, I did not realize that story that I was already creating in my head, that I wasn't good enough. But for me, that story in that instance of having a learning disability pushed me to prove everyone wrong. So although school was very difficult for me, I was able to get my master's, and I'm licensed as a therapist in 2 states. I still have a learning disability. I still have special accommodations for different things with my job and like test taking and all of that stuff. And so career-wise, I've been very, very blessed. I've been a mental health therapist for over 15 years. And when I was 33, so in 2012, I had the opportunity to commission as an officer in the Air Force. So I moved from Michigan to California and provided mental health treatment and substance abuse treatment to active duty and veterans. And at that point, at 33, I was literally not looking for a husband. Like I said, I've been very blessed in my professional life. Personally, not so much. I have always really struggled with being enough. I've been diagnosed with PTSD, anxiety, all of this stuff, and I'm a therapist, right?
Mhm.
So life has always been difficult for the most part. But when I got to the Air Force, I was not looking for a husband, but lo and behold, the man who I thought was the man of my dreams showed up, and it was a whirlwind of a relationship. And within 11 months of meeting him, we were married. And within 6 months of us getting married, things started changing. The man who I thought was the love of my life started treating me differently. The beginning of our relationship was a lot of what we call love bombing. So it was like I was the most amazing person in the world. He took me on extravagant vacations. We had a beautiful wedding in Napa and everything. And then after we got married, everything changed. He changed. Like he seemed annoyed and angry by me. And I started catching him in lies, and he was making me feel like I was crazy. Like when I would catch him in lies and all of these things, he would tell me I was crazy. And then I found out he had an affair for 14 months of our 2.5-year marriage. And that's when I started feeling again like I was not good enough. And I felt like I failed the marriage. He made me think that I failed the marriage. If I had done things differently, all of this stuff, things wouldn't have turned out this way. And so he never told me, this is the important piece, is that he never told me that I was not good enough. But I created that story, that thought in my head based on his actions and his behaviors. And that thought, I'm not good enough, not just affected my relationship with him, but started affecting my entire life, my career, me thinking I wasn't a good therapist, a good friend, a good, sister, daughter, what have you. And I literally spiraled into this black hole. And the more that I tried to save our marriage, the more distant he became. And so my abandonment issues from childhood also really, played a part in this. So like I would get angry and I would yell and scream and he would yell back at me. And there was some physical part in our relationship as well. And so in the 2.5 years that we were married, he kicked me out of our house twice. He filed for divorce 4 times and pulled the papers. So there was a lot of love bombing and then the pulling back and the discarding of me. And so for 2.5 years, I was just wrapped in this mental game that I literally thought that I was nothing. And he finally did file for divorce. But I was so traumatized by his narcissistic abuse and some of the physical and emotional abuse that I remained faithful and committed to him for 2 years after that. Now, mind you, I am a therapist. And so I tell my story because I think narcissistic abuse is not talked enough about, and also how the mind games can literally cause us to think that we're not good enough. And so for 2 years, we stayed together. We were dating. I never went back to our home. So he'd always come to my house or we would go out in public. And then I got this feeling, in my soul that like something had to change. But at that point, it was not me changing, like leaving my ex-husband, right? Like I was not ready to do that. So I got, a job transfer. I had gotten out of the military and was working at a hospital up in Northern California, and then got a job transfer down here to San Diego. And we still continued to talk. But again, the same things. I was catching him in lies. Like I was the crazy one. Like all of the abuse was still going on. And I remember he came down to San Diego in February of 2018. And now it's been 6 years. So the first time in 6 years, I am a Christian. And I remember praying this prayer before I pulled up to the airport. And I said, okay, Lord, if this is not meant to be, you need to show me. Because still I had this feeling and I still was like this emotional mess. And I wasn't putting 2 and 2 together. And so I said, okay, if you show me, because the affair and the divorce wasn't enough for me to leave, if you show me, I will walk away. And I kid you not, Frank, within 24 hours, we were sitting in my apartment here in Mission Valley. Not the one I live in currently. I had to leave after this one, but literally we're sitting on my couch, and I find out that he had moved in another woman a month before our divorce was final. Bought her a brand new car. I was not allowed to get an attorney. I walked away with absolutely nothing but a bunch of debt. He kept everything. And she had been living in our house for those 2 years that we were together. And I didn't even know she existed. And right then it was like, we got in a huge fight. You know, there were some not so good things that happened, and I kicked him out. And I have not had any contact with him since February 15th of 2018. Mind you, 3 months before that, I had lost my 6-figure job. So I had taken a job transfer down here, and 3 months later, lost my 6-figure job. And then 3 months after that, walked away from my ex-husband. And so I literally had nothing. I was 38 years old and literally had absolutely nothing. And I didn't know what to do. And so I just said, okay, I'm just going to take a leap of faith. And so I went into therapy myself and started doing, you know, my trauma work and really working on my mindset and all of that stuff. And I started my own private mental health practice and had to file for bankruptcy at 38 years old and literally had nothing. And so I started writing my book. So my book was written in the first 5 months that I walked away from him. So the most traumatic 5 months of my life. So that book I always say is my saving grace. But the 5 steps, which is what I talk about in my TED Talk, focus are the 5 steps that I actually went through in my recovery journey.
Mhm.
And so that book is real, it's raw, and it's really the main purpose is for people who literally feel like they're stuck, whether it be in their health, career, relationships, what have you, that this book can help them move from being stuck into their strength and knowing that they're enough. Because for me, that was the biggest thing, was knowing that I was enough. And so, yeah, I mean, here I am, like 2 years later, the book was launched. And then, I mean, we can jump into the rest of the stuff in a little bit if you want me to.
We'll get into it.
About the nonprofit and stuff, but that's just
one of the things, Megan, that I hear a lot is that people in abusive relationships, which you were in, many times don't feel that they're an abused spouse, and they feel, I deserve what's happening to me. Is that what you saw? Is that what you felt?
Yeah, because I grew up, he would always use my childhood against me. Like, I grew up in a very dysfunctional family. I don't like to talk about it because I do have a relationship with my parents and I love them very much. And we've gone through a lot of therapy, but it was very physically and emotionally abusive from my mother. And he would always use that against me because growing up and then even in other relationships, I have had some anger issues, right? Like, I've had anger issues. I've been in therapy in and out for many, many years. But he would use that against me. So I literally thought that when I would catch him in a lie and give him the proof, and then he would yell at me and I would yell at him back, you know, him saying, you're just crazy. Like, you don't have any trust from your childhood and from this guy or that guy. And so, yeah, I literally thought that I was damaged, even though deep down in my heart, I knew I wasn't, but I loved him so much that he literally made me think that I was damaged and that this was all my fault.
I hear that more and more, and that it's regaining your strength.
Mm-hmm.
Is there is that point, I'm going to do something about it and take control back of my life, which is what your book was. Now, You're Enough is 5 steps to move from struggle to strength. So you've told us what led you up to that point. How hard was it to write that book?
Honestly, I wasn't planning on writing a book. And then when I started writing, I was just going to write the steps that I was going through. Because actually a lot of the steps that I talk about are steps that I work on with my patients as well. And it was funny because, to be honest, when I started writing the book and there's a chapter in the book called Mr. N, Mr. Narcissist, which shares my story. It was not until I started writing that chapter did I realize the severity of the narcissism that I was involved in. And narcissistic personality disorders in the DSM. I've dealt with it for many years with just being a therapist and patients and all of that, but it did not register to me that could have actually been my ex-husband or the type of relationship I was in. So the book was very eye-opening to me, and it was a healing journey for me. It was difficult, but it also was my healing process because I was able to put stuff out on paper. I actually did a lot of dictating. I wrote my book a lot with recording it and then having it come back to me like, I can't remember, dictated or whatever. But because I really wanted that raw emotion to come out, and it was hard for me to write that raw emotion.
Exactly.
But it was, I was living alone, and 5 months and it was out. So it was a good experience for me.
That's amazing. I've heard that quite a bit, that I didn't intend to write a book. But as you start putting your thoughts down and talking to friends and people who love you, who are encouraging you,
Yes.
it sort of morphs into this book, which I understand is a bestseller. So it morphed very nicely for you.
Yes.
Now, I've read part of the book. I haven't got it in. I've ordered it, but I haven't got it. But I was reading part of the book. And one of the things that you said in the introduction, right in the beginning, you had a dream. And this dream was like the aha moment. Describe that for the viewers.
Oh my gosh, you're the first person to ever, I've been on so many talk shows and podcasts and everything, and you're the first one to ask this question. I love this question.
Well, good.
I had this dream. It was in January of 2018 or 17, I can't remember, but it was so vivid. And it was with Sarah Jessica Parker.
Mm-hmm.
And we were in this big, I don't even know who was with me, but it was like this, I think it might have been in the middle of New York City or something. We were like, there's all these women around, right? And like, just all of this stuff. And like, it was so vivid. And she was just talking about like owning yourself, basically. And like, you've got this, and like, no one's going to tell you not what to do. And like, you can do whatever you put your mind to. And like, of all people, Sarah Jessica Parker, I still don't know why, but it was such a vivid dream for me. And I think that, I have never had a dream like that before. At that point, I was having a lot of, in 2018, at that point, I was having a lot of trauma, nightmares. And so I really wasn't dreaming much. And so to have that dream of like just her shouting, and it was just like so amazing. All these women were shouting, like being enough and like go and get it and like all of this stuff. So that's the intro to my book.
And it was incredibly inspiring to look at that. It was like, okay, this is it. I'm done. Things are going to change.
Mm-hmm.
And then the process began.
Yeah, it was when so that dream was before I actually kicked him out. So that dream was about a month before, because then he came to my house in February. And so, he has continued to message me on email. He's blocked from everything else, but he, has been threatening and all this stuff. Even he still thinks he has control over me. I have not responded to anything from him since February 2018. So for me, like, I completely walked away. And so, when that dream happens, and that nudging feeling that I was talking about, like, that was literally saying, my higher power, my God, was saying, Megan, there's so much more for you in this life, and you have got to just listen. You've got to slow down, and you've got to trust. And then the minute I got rid of that toxicity, everything in my life changed. Now, again, it's not been sunshine and rainbows, and it's been very difficult, but it's way better than what it was for the 6 years that he was in my life.
We had a guest on not too long ago, Megan, and she talked about cutting the cords, that it's okay. First, you have to want to change, and then forgive yourself.
Yes.
And then cut the cords. And that's what you did, correct?
Yes. And I'm actually writing a second book. It's coming out next year that talks more about the forgiveness process of yourself and the acceptance piece. Because what I've learned in my first book, when I talk about it with patients, I didn't touch enough on acceptance, right? And that's really the first step. And so my second book is really focused on acceptance and what does that mean? And because I think a lot of us have this negative connotation to the word acceptance, and it's really not a bad word.
Right.
And so I talk a lot about acceptance and forgiving yourself, because you have to forgive yourself in order to find that acceptance. So yes, you
Exactly.
have, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So Megan, what does it mean to be enough? How do you define it?
Well, it took me a long time to find that meaning. But for me, to be enough for me personally means that I unapologetically own who I am.
Beautiful. That's a great answer.
Well, I first started out, when I started in my trauma therapy, I started out as, I am enough because I got out of bed this morning. Because for that piece, like, that's how low of the low I was. Like, I had to start somewhere. And as the more I started doing the work and all of that stuff, that, that statement continued to change. So.
Mm-hmm. Now, one thing that I love that I saw in the book was you talk about a vision board. Okay. What is a vision board?
Oh my gosh, if I would have pulled mine off my bathroom wall if I would have known, because I love vision boards. So I am a huge visual coping skill guru. That's what I talk so much about with my patients. And that is basically how my nonprofit was built, was on visual coping skills. And so a vision board is a visual coping skill. So a vision board can be anything that you want. So I work with a lot of chronic pain patients right now. And so it's really like, what motivates you? So as you know, when we get into our head, it's hard for us to get out of our head when we're thinking negatively. And what visual coping skills, vision boards, that kind of stuff does, allows you to refocus on something tangible, like that you can see and touch, that helps distract that negative thought in your mind. And so when my vision board's hanging in my bathroom, and it used to be on my back door, but now I have a roommate, so it's in my bathroom. And so my vision board is a bunch of quotes. I'm a huge quote fan, and it has my logo from my nonprofit. It has my second book coming up, and it's got all of these different quotes. And so in the morning when I'm getting ready, and I also have different quotes on my mirror, I read those things, because sometimes I wake up in the morning and I'm tired, or I'm like, oh, I don't feel like doing this today, or I feel like I'm not enough today. Then I can change that thought and read and look at my vision board. So vision boards can be pictures, quotes, anything that maybe you want to achieve in the future. Maybe in 2021, you want to make a vision board for 2021 of things that you want to achieve. It's just something to keep you focused that you can visualize.
It's almost like a reconditioning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as therapists, we call it cognitive restructuring.
Cognitive
So we're restructuring our brain to think positively.
It's a great term. That's why you use it all the time.
Yeah.
Now, there's a statement in your book, and I'm going to paraphrase this, but as you're dealing with people, it's don't let the circumstances dictate your life, your situation. So when you coach people, everybody has baggage, right? Some have more than others, but everybody has baggage. How do you get them to start moving forward when you initially see somebody?
It literally starts with acceptance. And that's why I talked about it earlier. I wasn't going to write a second book, but honestly, I feel like I gypped my readers out of that whole acceptance piece, because the more I started speaking around the country and all of this stuff about my book and the steps, the acceptance piece kept coming up. And so to be able to move forward, it includes a lot of different steps, but the main one is acceptance, because then that leads you into being able to discover who you truly are in this moment, not who you were, but who you are today.
Mm-hmm. I've heard that a lot. Is what happened has happened. It's over. It's done. Okay. And during some low points in my life, I had someone tell me, he said, "Look, Frank, stop looking behind you, because there's nothing new to see in the past." And that sounds like the approach you're taking with your people. Is that right?
Yeah, but the other piece I always add with acceptance, because I think some people get a little frustrated with that, because they think, well, I'm not okay with it. And that's okay. This is actually a part that I talk about in my TED Talk, is acceptance doesn't mean that you have to be okay with that it happened. Like for me, I say like, I accept that this happened in my marriage. I wasn't okay with it. It sucked. I hated it. It hurt. But you know what? I acknowledge that it happened. And by acknowledging that it happened allows me, even though I didn't like it, allows me to move forward. And that's the big piece, is that acceptance basically is you're saying, this is reality. It is what it is. I can't change it. I don't like it, blah, 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 but I'm going to move forward. And that's the big piece about acceptance, is remembering that you don't have to be okay that it happened.
That's perfect. I love that. Now, you just gave a TED Talk. Share with the viewers. What is that process like? What did you have to go through to become
Oh my
a
goodness.
TEDx?
Well, I don't know. Yes. I mean, it's happening in January, which, and so, yes, we were supposed to do it 2 other times. And then with the pandemic, I have been so honored and so blessed. It's been on my bucket list, and the organizer, Sarah, I was actually an alternate because I had put in my application too late, but she's so sweet. She's like, I just love your story, and I'm just going to put you as an alternate. And even as an alternate, like, you still got a coach and you still got all of the same things as an actual speaker. And then 2 weeks after we started all of our speaking stuff, someone dropped out. So I immediately got in. And so I've literally been working on my talk for over a year because we were supposed to do it 2 other times. But it's a great process. So, I speak all over the country, and for me, I'm going to be honest, I don't ever memorize my speeches. I have a learning disability. And so for me, I just like to talk about what comes up in my heart. Like, I feel like that's God saying, okay, you know what? Like, this is what I want you to talk about, or whatever. So I never rehearse. So this has been very difficult for me because it's actually a 15-minute talk. So it's not a 3-minute talk. So we all have longer. And my speech has been, written and rewritten and all of this stuff. I have a coach. And so we practiced and did blocking and all of that stuff. And so memorizing is a little scary for me because I like to just talk.
Just go with it.
But now I have this amazing 15-minute speech that I have memorized that I can talk about whenever or wherever. So I'm a little disappointed that the event is taking place in Las Vegas, but it's not going to be with an audience, but people can actually tune in virtually and watch the TED Talks. There's, I think, 30 maybe speakers on a range of different things. And it's going to be an amazing event. And so I'm super excited about it, just to have this opportunity.
Tell the viewers what the screening process is like. You put in the application, then what?
I have to be honest.
Yes, perfect.
I do not have this. Okay. So I have applied for so many TED Talks and I haven't heard anything. And so one of my friends actually, I had heard about this TED Talk. And so I actually had applied, I had actually messaged the organizer, which was Sarah, and never heard back from her. And then my friend had posted that she was doing the TED Talk. And so I reached out to her and I was like, hey, because I never found where I could apply from. Right. And so I was like, hey, congratulations, blah, blah, blah. I said, I actually messaged Sarah a couple months ago and never heard back. And she's like, oh, let me connect you to. So that's how it was. I actually never had to apply. So it just, and Sarah was like, oh my gosh, yeah, now I see your message you sent months ago. And, she had seen my stuff on Facebook and all of the stuff I'm doing with my movement and my speaking and everything. So I've applied for actual other TED Talks. This one I did not technically apply for. So
it worked out well.
It did. I am very blessed. Like I said, very blessed.
And Sarah, ladies and gentlemen, I have interviewed Sarah, and she's an amazing organizer, and she spoke volumes about Megan and her story and the way she presents herself. So if you get the opportunity, when it comes up, make sure you listen to this. It's going to be an outstanding show.
Yes.
Absolutely. So Megan, what are these? Tell us about this nonprofit.
Okay. So a year after I walked away from my ex-husband, 2019, February, I was getting restless again. The book was out and, things were going well. And I wanted to give back. Like I am a huge, I love giving back to people. And so as a therapist, like I said, I talk a lot about the power of visual coping skills. And so I came up with this idea to make these visual coping cards, and I had no idea what was going to happen with them. And so I have the cards right here. So this is the card. It says, I am enough. And then on the back, it has the word because, and then you write on the 3 lines why you believe you're enough. And people get 5 of these for free. You go to the website, you get 5 of them. You can, I have one in my car. I've got one here at my table. I've got them all over. And you pull this out and you read why you believe you're enough when you're having those thoughts of not feeling like enough. Mm-hmm. And it's that cognitive restructuring. It just stops you in your track and focus on something positive. So in February, I was at an event. It was Oscar weekend in LA. And I was like, okay, I'm just going to start handing these out. And one of the things too is that I take selfies of people holding the cards. And I had no idea what was going to happen, but literally within I think 8 months, I had sent over 7,000 of these cards to 22 countries in all 50 states. So which that means that people had organically heard about this movement and went to the website and ordered the cards. And so that was February 2019. And people can still order their cards for free. And then in September of 2019, a friend came up to me and said, hey, you really got to think about turning this into a nonprofit. And I was like, I'm a therapist. I don't know anything about running a business, nor I don't know if I can do that. But I knew at that point I was kind of feeling stuck with the movement. What else can I do? But funding wasn't there. So I took another leap of faith. And in November, the I Am Enough Movement 501c3 nonprofit was born. And we are currently raising money to break ground on a domestic violence emergency shelter and transitional living home here in San Diego called Freedom Haven. So we have a long way to go. Right now, we're just raising money. And hopefully in the coming years, we will have another transitional living home for domestic violence survivors. So that is the nonprofit.
That's excellent. So Sarah, up to over 200,000 people have watched the show in 42 countries. So they don't all watch them every time, but so this message, your message, the I Am Enough and those cards, 42 potential countries are going to see this.
That's amazing.
Drive them to your website and get this thing rolling for you. Well, this has been outstanding. We're getting near the end here, Sarah. Megan. Speaking of Sarah on the brain here. All that you've done and all that you've accomplished, what last words, what last thoughts do you want to leave with the viewers around the world?
Oh my goodness. I have so many thoughts. But I think the biggest thing is if you're struggling, if you feel like you're stuck, even though it can be scary, you have to do the work. And there's so many places and people out there that can assist you in doing this work. You have to figure out whenever you go through something that's life-changing, whether it be work, career, relationships, what have you, you are no longer that person that you were. And that means you have to rediscover yourself. And it can be scary, but it literally is the most amazing adventure and journey that you will ever go on. And so I just want to encourage anyone that is feeling stuck or not enough to always be brave, always be bold and unapologetic, and to remember that you are enough. So those are kind of some of my closing words that I like to say.
Outstanding. Well, as I mentioned, ladies and gentlemen, we're just about out of time. I want to thank Megan for sharing this incredible story. There were several life-altering events in Megan's life. And as she has pointed out, and I will reiterate that, and no matter what life throws at you, please do 3 things. Look up, get up, never, ever give up. If you want more information about Megan, you can contact me. You can go to her website directly. And if it comes to me, I'll make sure that she gets it. You can see this on ROKU TV. It'll be on my YouTube channel. It'll be sent to Megan, and she'll put it up in all the places that you look for things from Megan. So let me leave you with this, ladies and gentlemen. None of us are in this alone. And the secret to walking on water is to know where the rocks are. And Megan has shown us today where many of those rocks are. So join me again next week as we investigate another life-altering event. Thank you.
Thank you.